Glyphosate residue, ultra-processed additives, and misleading organic claims were all found hiding inside some of America's most trusted bread brands. That loaf sitting on your counter right now, the one with the whole grain label and the sunny packaging, it might contain refined sugars, chemical preservatives, and dough conditioners dressed up as wholesome nutrition. If this has been your go-to bread for 10, 20, 30 years, everything we found has been in your body that entire time. Today, we're breaking down 12 bread brands that fail to deliver what their labels promise, including several most people consider healthy alternatives, plus the 2 brands that actually proved they are what they say they are. By the end, you'll know exactly what's in your bread basket and which loaves need to go in the trash tonight. Coming in at number 12, Great Value Bread, the yellow label, the Walmart staple. The bread millions of families grab without a second thought because the price feels right and the packaging says whole grain. But consumer testing has told a different story for years. Independent lab analyses have repeatedly flagged Great Value bread lines for highly processed ingredient panels that contradict the clean image those select organic and whole grain labels suggest. Preservatives designed to extend shelf life far beyond what any real bread should last. Sodium levels that creep well above what cardiologists recommend for daily intake. Pick up a loaf of Great Value white bread and squeeze it. Feel how unnaturally soft it is, how it compresses to almost nothing and then slowly puffs back. Real bread doesn't do that. Real bread has structure, crust, resistance. This bread is engineered to feel fresh while being anything but. The ingredient list reads like a chemistry textbook. Emulsifiers, calcium sulfate, monoglycerides, chemicals that exist to make industrial bread behave like something homemade. They're not there for your health. They're there for shelf stability and profit margins. A loaf costs $2. That's what your family's nutrition is worth to a trillion-dollar corporation. For people managing kidney function or heart concerns, or anyone on daily blood pressure medication, the sodium and additive load in these loaves may quietly work against the very treatments keeping you stable. Walmart generated over $600 billion in revenue last year. They could source cleaner ingredients for every store brand on the shelf. They don't because cheaper ingredients mean wider margins, and you keep buying it because the price is right. Budget, bread, premium risk. Check the ingredient list on that loaf tonight. You might not finish reading before you finish the bread. If the budget brand cuts every corner, surely the nostalgic family favorite is better. Think again. Number 11. Martin's Potato Bread. That soft golden loaf. The one your grandmother kept on the counter because it reminded her of homemade bread from decades ago. Martin's built an empire on that nostalgia. Soft as a cloud, golden as butter, and about as nutritious as cotton candy. Nutrition reviews consistently rank Martin's potato bread among the most processed loaves on American shelves. Enriched wheat flour, which is refined flour stripped of its natural nutrients and then artificially supplemented. High fructose corn syrup or added sugars depending on the variety. Soybean oil. Ingredients designed for texture and sweetness, not for feeding a human body. Open the bag. That faintly sweet smell isn't wheat. It's sugar and engineered softness. Toast a slice and watch how fast it browns, almost instantly, because the sugar content caramelizes before the bread even crisps. That's not a feature. That's a warning sign. The refined carbohydrates in Martin's break down rapidly in your bloodstream. For people actively managing blood sugar or families feeding this to children alongside sugary lunches, the glucose spike can be significant. Enriched flour means the original grain was so thoroughly processed that federal regulations required nutrients to be added back in. Think about that. They destroyed the nutrition, then sprinkled some back in and called it enriched. The label says potato bread. The ingredient list says there's more sugar and oil than potato in that recipe. A homemade image wrapped around an industrial product. Your grandmother's bread didn't come from a factory. Martin's does. Nostalgia is powerful. But nostalgia won't protect your arteries. That was the brand built on memory. But the next one was built on something even harder to question: reputation. The jingle, the softness, the name that's been in American kitchens since your parents were young. Sara Lee is one of the most trusted bread brands in the country, and that trust has been coasting on decades of advertising rather than decades of quality. Independent reviews have criticized multiple Sara Lee loaves for ingredient panels packed with preservatives, added sugars, and processing agents that have no place in bread that markets itself with whole grain claims. Calcium peroxide for dough conditioning. Sodium stearoyl lactylate as an emulsifier. Datum, another dough conditioner used to create that signature soft crumb. These are industrial baking chemicals. They exist so bread can be made faster, shipped farther, and stored longer. None of them exist because they're good for you. Pull apart a slice of Sara Lee. Notice how it tears in that uniform, almost spongy way. Real whole grain bread has texture, variation, density. Sara Lee has engineered consistency. Every slice identical because the process demands it, not because the ingredients are better. For people managing hypertension or insulin resistance, or anyone taking medication that requires careful sodium monitoring, the preservative load and added sugars in Sara Lee may quietly compound the very conditions you're trying to control. The brand name says homemade. The factory says otherwise. Sara Lee doesn't bake your bread. A corporation does, and corporations optimize for profit, not for your pancreas. 60 years of trust, 60 years of additives. Nobody told you because nobody had to. You kept buying it. If the brand your parents trusted can't deliver, at least the one that looks artisanal should be different. Number 9. Pepperidge Farm. The farmhouse on the package. The rustic fonts. The name that conjures images of stone ovens and country kitchens. Pepperidge Farm wants you to believe every loaf is crafted with care. Owned by Campbell's Soup Company, a corporation with over $8 billion in annual revenue. That farmhouse is a marketing department. Some Pepperidge Farm varieties have been scrutinized for ingredient lists that contradict the premium artisanal image. Refined flour blends instead of true whole grains. Canola oils and soybean oils that are cheap to source and inflammatory when consumed regularly. Additives like azodicarbonamide, a dough conditioner that's banned in the European Union and Australia because of health concerns. Banned overseas. Legal here, in your farmhouse bread. Smell a fresh slice. That faintly chemical undertone beneath the wheat. That's not the scent of a country bakery. That's the scent of industrial processing masked with engineered flavoring. The bread feels premium because the crust is slightly firmer, the color slightly darker. But darker doesn't mean healthier. Caramel coloring can make any white bread look like whole wheat. For people watching cholesterol levels, or anyone whose doctor has flagged inflammation markers, the combination of refined oils and processing agents may contribute to exactly the cardiovascular strain you're trying to avoid. Pepperidge Farm charges premium prices. They deliver premium packaging. What's inside the bag is the same industrial bread wearing a nicer outfit. You're not paying for quality. You're paying for a painting of a barn. The farmhouse doesn't exist. The chemicals do. You've seen budget brands fail and heritage brands deceive, but this next brand specifically targets people trying to eat healthier. Number 8. Arnold Bread. The multi-grain label, the whole wheat promise, the bread you switched to because your doctor said eat more fiber. Arnold advertises loaves that look and sound like the healthy choice. Multi-grain, organic, inspired, seeded. The packaging communicates nutrition. The ingredient list tells a different story. Certain Arnold products have drawn criticism for hidden sweeteners that don't belong in bread marketed to health-conscious consumers. High fructose corn syrup in some formulations. Molasses and honey that sound natural but function as sugar. The front of the bag says multigrain. The back of the bag says sugar by 4 different names. Squeeze a slice between your fingers. Feel how pliable it is. Bread made from real whole grains has chew, resistance, substance. Arnold's softness comes from dough conditioners and added fats that mimic the texture of quality without delivering the nutrition. For people taking diabetes medications who specifically chose this bread to manage blood sugar, the hidden sweeteners may be actively undermining your prescriptions. Your doctor said multigrain. Arnold said multigrain. But what Arnold means by multigrain and what your body needs from multigrain are 2 very different things. Multiple grains doesn't mean whole grains. It can mean multiple refined grains blended together and marketed as health food. The front of the label does the selling. The ingredient list does the damage. And the gap between those 2 is where your health gets lost. You switched to Arnold because you wanted to be healthier. Arnold counted on you not flipping the bag over. If this helps you stay safer at the store, hit subscribe. It's free, and it means you'll never miss these investigations. If the health-focused brand hides sugar, what about the one that practically screams natural on every shelf? Number 7. Nature's Own. Green packaging. Soft wheat imagery. Taglines about wholesome family nutrition. Nature's Own is designed to make you feel good about grabbing it off the shelf without reading a single word on the back. Several varieties have faced criticism from consumer watchdog groups for glyphosate residue traces. Glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, the herbicide linked to thousands of cancer lawsuits worldwide, found in bread that calls itself natural. The word natural on food packaging has almost no legal meaning in the United States. The FDA has never formally defined it for bread labeling. Brands know this. Nature's Own knows this. They use the word anyway because it sells. It's not a standard, it's a strategy. Open the bag and take a breath. That faintly stale sweetness isn't fresh-baked anything. It's preservatives maintaining the illusion of freshness weeks after the loaf left the factory. The bread is engineered to stay soft long past the point any real bread would harden. For families who serve this daily, or anyone managing cholesterol alongside blood pressure medication, the sodium load and processed oils may be quietly aggravating the very conditions the medication is meant to control. Flours. Foods could reformulate every loaf in their lineup by next quarter. They have the revenue, they have the supply chain, they have the resources. They won't because clean ingredients cut into margins, and you never complained because the word natural kept you comfortable. Nature's Own belongs to a company generating nearly $5 billion annually. Nature's Own isn't Nature's anything. It's marketing's own. And marketing doesn't care about your blood pressure. See the pattern yet? Budget brands cut corners. Heritage brands ride reputation. Natural brands exploit loopholes. So where does that leave the organic labels? Let's find out. Number 6, brownberry. The rustic brown packaging. The whole grain imagery, the name that sounds like it came from a countryside bakery. Brownberry appeals to shoppers who want something that feels more authentic than standard supermarket bread. Here's what they don't tell you. Brownberry is owned by the same parent company as Arnold and Oro Wheat. Bimbo Bakeries, USA, the largest baking company in the world. 3 brands, 1 factory system, 1 supply chain, 3 different packages designed to make you think you're choosing something unique. Critics have highlighted preservatives and dough conditioners in several brownberry products marketed as healthier alternatives. Calcium, propionate to prevent mold, sodium stearoyl lactylate for texture. Ingredients that exist to make industrial bread survive shipping routes and warehouse storage, not to make you healthier. Touch a brownberry slice. That slightly grainy texture that feels like real whole grain. Run your fingers across it. The grains are surface decoration, seeds and oat flakes pressed into dough that's fundamentally the same processed recipe underneath. The illusion of health pressed onto the surface of a conventional loaf. For people managing fluid retention, or anyone whose cardiologist has flagged sodium intake, the preservative load and added salt in these loaves may increase the swelling and blood pressure spikes you're actively trying to prevent. Brownberry isn't a bakery. It's a brand name owned by a global corporation that sells the same bread 3 times under 3 different labels. The rustic packaging costs more than the bread inside. 3 brands, 1 recipe, 3 prices. That's not baking. That's accounting. A lot of people switched to this next brand thinking they were avoiding everything we just talked about. They weren't. Number 5. Oro Wheat, the seeded loaves. The organic lines. The simple packaging that communicates clean nutrition without shouting about it. Oro Wheat feels like the sensible choice. The bread-smart shoppers pick because it looks less processed than everything else on the shelf. Consumer watchdog groups have flagged some Oro Wheat products for creating misleading organic impressions while still using emulsifiers and refined sweeteners in certain formulations. The word organic appears prominently on select varieties, but organic on the front doesn't mean organic inside. Some ingredients qualify. Others don't. The label creates an impression the ingredient list doesn't fully support. Tear a piece of Oro Wheat's seeded bread and look at the cross-section. See those seeds scattered throughout. They're real, but the dough holding them together may contain the same refined sweeteners and emulsifiers found in conventional bread. Seeds on the outside, processing on the inside. For people actively managing type 2 diabetes or families trying to reduce sugar across their daily meals, the blood sugar spikes from refined sweeteners hidden in supposedly clean bread can complicate glucose management in ways you don't see until the lab work comes back. Oro Wheat charges more because seeds and organic labels justify higher prices. But a higher price doesn't mean a higher standard. It means a higher margin for the same parent company selling you Arnold and Brownberry from the same supply chain. This is the bread you chose because you were trying to do better. Oro Wheat counted on that effort. They priced it into every loaf. The seeds are real. The organic impression may not be. The next brand on this list has a loyal following that swears by it. What the nutrition label shows is a different story. Number 4. Dave's Killer Bread. The bold packaging, the punk rock branding, the origin story about second chances and organic living that made Dave's the darling of health food aisles. Dave's Killer Bread didn't just sell bread, it sold a movement, a brand identity so powerful that questioning the product felt like questioning the mission. USDA Organic Certified, seeded, high protein, everything the health-conscious shopper wants to see. Then nutritionists started reading the labels more carefully. Some varieties contain surprisingly high sugar content, 5 grams or more per slice in certain formulations, even while carrying that organic seal. 2 slices for a sandwich means 10 grams of sugar before you add anything else. Organic sugar is still sugar. Your pancreas doesn't care about the certification. Open a bag of Dave's, that dense, seedy aroma. The loaf feels heavier than conventional bread, and that weight signals quality to most consumers. But weight doesn't equal nutrition. Some of that heft comes from ingredients designed to create a premium mouthfeel rather than deliver superior health benefits. For adults managing weight alongside diabetes, or anyone whose doctor has recommended reducing sugar intake, the organic label creates a false sense of safety. You eat more because it feels virtuous. The sugar accumulates because the label gave you permission to stop counting. Dave's built something remarkable with second chances and organic values. But organic certification doesn't mean low sugar. It doesn't mean the bread won't spike your glucose. It means the sugar was grown without synthetic pesticides. Your bloodstream doesn't know the difference. A great story, a great brand, a label that needs reading. Think you've been making the smart choice by paying more for sprouted grains? Wait until you see what sprouted really means. Number 3. Alvarado Street Bakery. Sprouted grain bread, the gold standard of healthy baking, or so the marketing says. Alvarado Street built its reputation on the idea that sprouted grains are nutritionally superior, easier to digest, and closer to what bread was meant to be. For many health-conscious shoppers, sprouted grain bread feels like the final upgrade, the bread you graduate to when you've rejected everything processed. But investigations into sprouted grain labeling practices across the industry have raised uncomfortable questions. Some products marketed as sprouted still rely heavily on processed grain mixtures that may not deliver the nutritional advantages consumers expect. The term sprouted on a label doesn't have the rigorous regulatory definition most shoppers assume it does. Squeeze a slice. Does it feel dense and grainy the way truly minimally processed bread should? Or does it compress with that same suspiciously uniform softness that every other factory bread shares? The distinction matters because texture tells you more about processing than any label can. For people monitoring glucose control who chose sprouted bread specifically to manage carbohydrate absorption, the reality may be disappointing. Sprouted or not, the carbohydrate load in these loaves can still cause rapid absorption and blood sugar elevation if the underlying grain mixture is more processed than the label implies. Alvarado Street charges premium prices for sprouted grain bread because the word sprouted commands premium trust. But trust based on a label rather than transparent testing is exactly how every other brand on this list got away with it. Sprouted sounds better. Whether it performs better depends entirely on what's actually inside the bag. And that's a question most consumers never think to ask. That was the bread people trust because of a single word on the label. The next one carries an even more powerful word. Number 2. Rudy's Organic Bakery. The word organic right there in the brand name. Not on a product line. Not on a select variety. In the name itself, Rudy's Organic Bakery sounds like a promise baked into every loaf before you even pick it up. The brand markets itself with non-GMO ingredients, simple recipes, and clean organic baking. For shoppers exhausted by misleading labels, Rudy's feels like the safe harbor. Some consumer reports have told a different story. Criticism has centered on processed starches and stabilizers that seem inconsistent with expectations for minimally processed organic bread. Tapioca starch, xanthan gum, ingredients that serve manufacturing convenience rather than nutritional value. They're not dangerous in isolation, but they're not what you picture when someone says organic bakery. Open a bag of Rudy's gluten-free line and smell it. That faintly neutral, almost plasticky scent that processed starches carry. Compare it to the earthy, weedy aroma of a loaf made from freshly ground grain. The difference isn't subtle, it's the difference between food and food engineering. For older adults with digestive sensitivity or chronic inflammation who switched to Rudy's specifically because the word organic made it feel safer, the stabilizers and processed starches may trigger exactly the gut discomfort and blood sugar instability you were trying to escape. The brand name says Organic Bakery. The ingredient list says Processed Starch Bakery. Names are marketing. Ingredient lists are reality, and the gap between the two is where trust goes to die. Organic in the name. Processing in the bag, that's not a bakery, that's a branding exercise. We're not done. The number 1 spot goes to a brand that almost everyone considers the healthiest bread in America, and what the fine print reveals may genuinely surprise you. Number 1. Ezekiel 4:9 by Food for Life. Biblical inspiration. Sprouted grain nutrition. No artificial preservatives. No refined sugars. No flour at all. Just sprouted whole grains and legumes combined according to a recipe inspired by Scripture. Ezekiel bread isn't just food. It's faith, identity, and health philosophy combined into one frozen loaf. That's what makes this so complicated. Food for Life has built enormous trust among health-conscious communities. The bread is legitimately different from conventional loaves. Real sprouted grains. Minimal processing. Transparent ingredient lists. But nutrition experts have raised a caution that most loyal customers don't want to hear. Even sprouted grain bread contains dense carbohydrate loads that may be problematic for certain metabolic conditions. The absence of flour doesn't mean the absence of carbohydrates. Sprouted wheat, sprouted barley, sprouted lentils, they all convert to glucose in your bloodstream. The glycemic impact may be lower than white bread, but it's not zero. It's not even close to zero. Take a frozen slice and hold it. Feel the weight, the density, the roughness of the surface. This bread demands toasting. Raw, it's nearly inedible, grainy and stiff. That texture signals minimal processing, and it's genuine. But that genuineness doesn't exempt it from basic biochemistry. For adults over 50 managing blood sugar with medication, or anyone who has built their entire diet around the belief that Ezekiel bread is metabolically neutral, portion control still matters. 2 slices still deliver a significant carbohydrate dose that requires insulin response. The bread isn't dishonest. The perception is incomplete. Ezekiel bread may be the best conventional option on the shelf, but the best option on a bad shelf doesn't mean the option is perfect. Trust the ingredients. Question the halo. Even scripture can't change your blood sugar. Drop a comment if any of these brands are sitting in your kitchen right now. Let's see how many of us have been trusting labels instead of reading them. 12 brands. 12 labels that promised more than they delivered. From Great Value's budget chemicals to Ezekiel's carbohydrate blind spot. From Sara Lee's 60-year deception to Dave's organic sugar trap. That's what's been sitting in your bread basket. That's what you've been feeding your family. But don't give up on bread entirely. 2 brands prove it's still possible to buy a loaf that actually is what it claims to be. Safe pick 1, Silver Hills Bakery. Finally, a bread that earns the organic label. Silver Hills focuses on sprouted organic grains with minimal processing and no artificial preservatives across most of their core products. Not a select line. Not a limited variety. The entire approach is built around the principle that bread should contain recognizable ingredients you could name without a chemistry degree. They maintain USDA organic certification, non-GMO verification, and transparent ingredient labeling. Open a bag of Silver Hills and the difference hits you immediately. That earthy, nutty aroma of real sprouted grains, dense without being heavy, moist without being engineered. Toast a slice and listen to the crackle of actual seeds and grain. The texture has variation, pockets of density next to lighter crumb, because real bread isn't uniform. Machines make uniform bread. Honest ingredients make interesting bread. The fiber content is notably higher than most competitors we investigated today. For people managing blood sugar or looking to support heart function through diet, that higher fiber creates a slower glucose response. The bread works with your body instead of against it. Silver Hills doesn't hide behind vague terms like natural or wholesome. They list what's inside and let the ingredients speak. No dough conditioners, no refined sweeteners, no emulsifiers maintaining artificial softness. The bread goes stale because real bread goes stale. That's not a flaw. That's proof it's actual food. It costs a few dollars more than the processed loaves we exposed. But you're not paying for marketing. You're paying for bread that doesn't require a betrayal punch. Safe pick 2, 1 Degree Organic Foods. If Silver Hills earns trust through simplicity, 1 Degree earns it through radical transparency. This brand does something almost no other bread company in America does. They let you trace every single ingredient back to the farm that grew it. Every bag comes with a QR code. Scan it and you see exactly where the wheat was grown, who grew it, and how it was processed. That's not a marketing gimmick. That's accountability. No other brand on this list can match. 1 Degree maintains USDA, organic certification and strict non-GMO standards across their entire bread line. But certification is just the baseline. The traceability is what sets them apart. When they say organic, they don't ask you to trust a logo. They show you the farm. They show you the farmer. They show you the field. Tear a slice of 1 Degree bread and examine it closely. The grain structure is visible, seeds intact, texture honest. This bread doesn't pretend to be something it's not because it doesn't have to. The ingredient list is short enough to read in a single breath. For anyone concerned about diabetes management, cholesterol, or long-term inflammation, the cleaner ingredient profile means fewer hidden variables working against your health. No mystery emulsifiers, no refined sweeteners masquerading as natural, no preservatives extending shelf life at the expense of your well-being. 1 Degree costs roughly the same as the premium brands we investigated, but unlike those brands, the premium price pays for premium ingredients instead of premium packaging. Transparency isn't a trend for 1 Degree, it's the entire business model. And in an industry built on vague labels and misleading claims, that's worth every penny. 12 brands investigated, 2 that deliver. Your bread basket deserves better. Subscribe now, and if you're watching on TV, tap your remote so you never get blindsided again.